recording. There we go. If you don't want to be on the recording, please let us know. Then we can make sure you won't appear in any published formats. All right. So welcome again, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. This is a webinar as part of the webinar series Explore Social Innovation in Energy Transitions, part of the SONNET project. And today we're going to talk about unlocking the transformative power of social innovations in energy transitions. My name is Niklas Mischkowski. I'm working for ICLA European Secretariat. We're a city network and a partner in the SONNET consortium. And this, by the way, is our 6th webinar, so way to go. Our agenda today looks like this. We have about 90 minutes for the guide on transformative power of social innovation in energy. And some of you might have already seen it. This is what it's looking like. And we're going to share the link at the end. And I think it's already in the chat as well. So very roughly, we're going to start with a short introduction. I will introduce a little bit to the project, to some of the core concepts, but I will really try to keep it short because our speakers will talk more about it. Then we have 3 speakers, which I will present to you in a minute, who will share their story about power. And then we have sufficient time, I hope, for Q&A and for breakout groups. And we'll have 2 different rounds of breakout groups. I will explain them before we start them, but it's basically one after the first presentation, which is more conceptual. And then after the 2 more practical presentations, we'll have a second breakout group where you can actually go on and choose your speaker that you want to follow through with. But I'm going to get back to all of it in a bit. All right. I think this, should be all. You can put questions in the chat the whole time. Basically, we'll try to answer them, but most of the discussion will happen in the breakout groups. And we hope that this provides enough room for you to exchange and also get answers to your questions. And thanks to those of you who have already sent us questions during the registration. Please also maybe just copy paste them again and take them along into your breakout group. And then we can also pick them up there. If you're active on social media, we invite you to also tweet about the guide on Twitter, for example, #PowerGuide. And we're happy for chiming in on our own activities there. So let's briefly start. So the SONNET project is about social innovation in energy transitions. You might have heard this a couple of times already now. The objectives are basically to capture the diversity of these social innovations, in brief SIE, to identify enabling and impeding conditions, evaluate their potential, and in the end also encourage their successful implementation. The way we do it in the project is that we work with 6 city labs across Europe. Those are Bristol, Mannheim, Antwerp, Grenoble, Warsaw, and Basel. And in some of the preceding webinars, we also covered our activities there, and we'll do so in the future. We still have about 6 months, so there's still some action ahead. This is our website. If you haven't been there yet, check it out. And now let's briefly look into what is social innovation in energy. So in general, when we talk about social innovations, we mean we're looking for a change in social relations. And this can happen by developing new ways of thinking, new type of knowledge, new meanings, new visions or images for a certain idea, let's say. It can mean new ways of doing things. So new technologies, new practices, mobility, biking instead of the car, that could be considered a social innovation, different types of materiality. And it can also mean new ways of organizing. So this can be, for example, how you organize yourself in your family. Do you have a new mode of celebrating Christmas? But it could also mean, do you have a new mode of producing energy and organizing this energy production? This is a quote which basically summarizes this idea. Social innovation in energy is a combination of ideas, objects, and or actions that change social relations and involve new ways of doing, thinking, and or organizing energy in this case. One of our first outcomes in the SONNET project was this typology of social innovation and energy. I'm not going to go into detail here because you can easily get lost, but basically what you see on the y-axis are these three ways of changing social relations: the thinking, doing, and organizing. And then on the x-axis on the top, you see these different qualities or different modes of social relations, so to say, would range from cooperation via exchange and competition to conflict. And in the middle, then you find these types that result from those. And maybe just to pick the first one, doing and cooperation, where do we end up with that? This type we had called then cooperative action. And one example could be local energy production and consumption, because this is where people need to work together and they actually do something. For example, installing solar panels on their roof, and then, if possible, organizing the selling of this. You find this typology also on our website. So if you're curious to browse through, just go to the website and you'll find it in different places. Then the next step that is a bit more up to date or a bit more recent is the development of these so-called fields of social innovation in energy. And basically those are kind of summarizing parts of these different types of social innovation that you can find. And so different types of social innovation are found within each of these fields. And this is, so to say, a bit more of a meta perspective to structure this whole idea of social innovations in energy transitions. And as you can see, we have the field of cooperatives, we have gamification in city level competitions, innovative financing mechanisms, participatory incubation and experimentation, which is basically what we are doing also in the SONNET project. So the city labs are a form of this participatory experimentation, where cities work together with social innovation actors in their city. Then we have framings against fossil fuel energy, pretty straightforward, I think, and local electricity exchange. All right. And this is basically all I want to say. This is a quick overview of what has happened in the project so far and what is currently also being worked at. Now I want to briefly present our three speakers. So as I already said, we have one more conceptual input for you and then two more practical. Our first speaker is Flor Avelina from the Dutch Research Institute for Transitions, who is also co-organizing this webinar. And we have some of the Drift colleagues here, Tessa and Magdalena, organizing the event and also in the background. Thanks for that. And Flor Avelina, if you don't know her yet, she has extensively published and done research on power in transition research, but also specifically in social innovation research. And we're very happy to have her here, and she will lead us a little bit deeper into what I started in this short introduction. Our second speaker then is Gert van der Mosten. I hope I pronounced this correct. He has been part of the SONNET project working for the city of Antwerp, but is currently now a program facilitator at Leuven 2030, which is like a network co-founded by the city of Leuven, together with other institutions, trying to create also a space for local participatory experimentation and incubation of transition projects and ideas, but he will talk more about that in his presentation. I won't read out those quotes. You might have seen them on Twitter, but this is a long one. But he will show us how in this intermediary position within a city organization, power is relevant, and how being aware of that actually creates the first change that you might want to effect. Then our third speaker is Chris Vrejos from Greece. He's a community engagement manager and also a co-founder of the energy community Hyperion, also based in Greece. And he's really the hands-on guy in our today webinar, I would say. And everything that you wanted to know about cooperative energy production or energy cooperatives in general, I think Chris will be able to answer. And he also has a few success stories to share with us today, and I'm very much looking forward to his presentation as well. with that, I want to stop here, and I want to give the floor to Flor Avelina for our first presentation on some more conceptual insights into what power in social innovation and energy means and why it's exciting, maybe. And yeah, after that, we will have the first breakout group, which will also give us an opportunity to get to know each other a bit more. But yeah, the details come after the presentation. So Flor, the floor would be yours. And I'm happy if you take over. And there we go.
Thank you, Niklas. And good morning, maybe good afternoon, good evening to some of you. I'm very excited to see you all on this Thursday to discuss power. But before I go into these concepts of transformative power and social innovation, I wanted to share with you the logic behind the image that is behind me. So if I step to the side, you see a little red figure. And what you see here is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is an American congresswoman, and she's running up the stairs of Capitol Hill to go vote in Congress. And I really like this image because it really symbolizes for me the paradox of power, which on the one hand is very much ingrained in institutions and structures, but at the same time, it's also in us as individual agents that can navigate and also change those institutions and structures. So maybe that's kind of the most important message I have about power, that it's paradoxical and dialectic. But there's more to say about that. So in this talk, I want to say a little bit about the background of the power guide, the need to talk about power, some ideas on how to do that, and also what the power guide aims to offer in that regard. What I'm not going to do, because of course there is a power guide, which you have all received, and it's really been written to be read. We also try to keep it short. If you take out the appendixes, it's really short and to the point and really meant to be read and used. And in addition to the power guide, there's also all these YouTube videos that try to explain a bit of the concepts behind it. So I'm not going to try to summarize and repeat all that. Instead, I'm going to try and highlight some of the most important starting points and concepts, also to frame the webinar, the next 1.5 hours that we're here together. So the most important starting point of all is that when we look at the energy system and we look at the social, the economic, but also the ecological challenges that we see in the energy system, these problems are intertwined, they're systemic, they're persistent. And this means that our argument is that innovation is necessary, but not enough to tackle these challenges. Technological innovation is not enough, so we need social innovation, but also social innovation is not enough, because what we need is transformative systemic change. What we call transitions towards more just and sustainable energy systems. So one of the main questions of the SONNET project is how social innovations can contribute to such energy transitions. And once in a while, I can hear people in the background. So I would like to ask everybody to mute yourself if you're not speaking. And then in the breakout groups, we will invite you to unmute and share your thoughts. Thank you very much. Okay, so this question on the transformative power of social innovation. So our argument is that social innovation needs to develop transformative power. And we argue that social innovations can exercise transformative power to the extent that they challenge, alter, and or replace the existing dominant power relations and structures. So if we would take the example of community energy, people who are producing their own energy, this is innovative, it's technologically innovative, it's socially innovative, but we argue it's only transformative if it really challenges the structures and institutions and the power relations that characterize the current energy system, which is, of course, centralized, fossil fuel-based, and highly polluting. But also the more fundamental economic system that is underlying it, which is characterized by overconsumption, hypercapitalism, and exploitative extractivism. Now, of course, all these things are easier said than done. So one of the challenges is, first of all, to understand what are these power relations and structures, but also what are the sources of power and who has transformative power. And again, this is much easier said than done, because we have been doing power research on power in transition for the past 15 years. And it's interesting to see that when you interview people about power, it's interesting to notice that there is three things that most of the people say. Of course, there are always exceptions, but a majority of people, when they are asked about power, they argue that they themselves don't have power, or at least very little, that others do have power, or at least more than they do. But the interesting thing is that when you ask people why things are the way they are, or why it's so difficult to change, they often point to power as an explanation for things. So this particular combination of perceptions leads to a situation of powerlessness, where a majority of people feels powerless in the face of reality. And also everybody, there's a tendency to wait and nobody moves. So this has led to the statement that powerlessness and the perception thereof is a greater impediment to change than the power of vested interest. And that therefore the challenge for transformative power is gaining a sense for transformative change, is gaining a sense and an understanding of power, and also developing this power literacy to be able to talk about it. Now, one of the things you can then do is turn to centuries of debate and research and scientific insights on power, right? But when you do that, you will quickly find out that power is one of the most contested concepts in social and political theory. And it's even so contested that when you start looking at definitions, they're often even opposite to each other. So some have defined power in terms of the capacity of A to pursue his or her self-interest at the cost of another, while others, like sociologist Parsons, has said that power is the capacity of systems to reach collective goals. So these are really opposite definitions. And another really famous debate that all the social scientists amongst you will recognize is this endless structure agency debate, which is also really characterizes discussions about power. It's this question whether power is mostly embedded in structures or in agents. And of course, everybody agrees it's a little bit of both, but scholars heavily disagree on to what extent it's one or the other, and to what extent you need to give priority to one or the other. And there's many other contestations. So in my theoretical work, I have identified all these different disagreements and contestations about what power is, whether it's centralized or diffused, consensual or conflictual, constraining or enabling, and so on. And then I have analyzed what different power theories have said about that, and also what this would mean to research social innovation and transformative change. So one of the challenges in the SONNET project is to see how we can use these understandings about power to then analyze how power plays out in social innovation and energy. But the SONNET project wants to go beyond that, because we also have this ambition, right, to not just facilitate discussion amongst researchers and scientific understanding, but also really facilitate exchange about power, not just amongst researchers, but also with policymakers and entrepreneurs and activists and social innovation and change makers more generally. So this has been very much the challenge that we had when we started these transformative power lab sessions that we organized in the past year. And the power guide that you have received is very much an outcome of that. Like, what are the kind of exercises that we developed? And it can start with something as simple as inviting people to share an image that represents power to them and explain that. But it also asks for using some of the more conceptual notions about power that exist and see how they can help to have a more structured conversation about power. But obviously, we're not going to share this with people, right? This is probably very disempowering if you give people this table and say, okay, discuss. So one of our big challenges was to, how can we translate these kind of conceptual models in a way that it simplifies to a certain extent, but without losing some of the complexity and multidimensional nature of power. So I want to share a few of these concepts that we used. So one very famous typology of power is the distinction between power to, power over, and power with. Where power to is really about getting things done. So it's the capacity to mobilize resources to achieve specific goals. And here it's really about intentionally affecting outcomes. So if we go back to this example of a community energy initiative, it's really about collecting, getting the resources together and getting those solar panels on the roof, for instance. So it's really about achieving that. Power over is about forcing and or impeding others to do what they would otherwise do or not do. So this is really about domination, dependency, oppression, and exploitation. This can be very visible, but it can also be hidden, invisible, or unconscious. So to go back to the example of community energy initiative, obviously this includes the fact that there are all sorts of regulations and a political context that can be either impeding or enabling for that community energy. But it can also refer to power dynamics within and around that community energy initiative, which may be visible or unconscious or unintended, which is, for instance, the question of who's being excluded from that initiative, for instance. And then power with is another type of power, which is about acting in concert. So it's the collective capacity to collaborate to achieve common goals, where this idea of coaction and empowerment is very much a goal in itself. So to go back to this example of the community energy initiative, the collaboration and the democratic decision-making is a goal in itself, even regardless of whether you'll get those solar panels or the roof or how fast, but the fact that you do it together and that there's democratic decision-making is a goal in itself. So that's the idea of power with. So one of the things that we explain in the power guide is that these three dimensions of power can help to invite people to reflect about power dynamics in their own initiative by really looking at all these different aspects and asking how that manifests in their own initiative. Now, one thing that is missing from this typology is the fourth dimension of power within. And we haven't included that in the power guide yet. And this is one of the follow-ups we want to work on further. And this is also an important disclaimer. The power guide is obviously it's not finished. It's just a starting point. And power within, it's very much comes from feminist literature about how, for instance, women are socialized to think a certain way about their own power. And it's very much about the need for people to kind of change those self-image to be able to first develop self-confidence before you can then start to challenge certain power relations in the external world. So this is very much the idea of power within. And this relates to a lot of issues around justice, injustice, gender, race, class, and so on. So there's a lot of issues that we haven't tackled in the power guide. And we see power as a starting point to have these uncomfortable discussions, but it's obviously not an end point because there's a lot to be said about each of those specific power inequalities. And this leads us to this other important dimension. When you talk about power, it is also very much about talking about the dark side of innovation. So, and really talking about the unintended consequences of innovation and change. Because there is a tendency when we talk about sustainable and just energy futures to imagine a future where there are no power relations. But when you ask yourself, if you, as a thought experience, say there will always be power struggles, there will always be power relations and power inequalities, then you can move on to ask what might be some of the unintended power implications of my initiative, and how can we deal with that? Because it's easy to imagine how renewable energy can lead to energy democracy or how it can help us redistribute power from big companies and governments to the people. But when you look at happy pictures of people producing their own energy, it's also equally important to ask who's not on that picture, who's being excluded and why. But then not end there, which is often what power analysis tends to do, but end in this kind of cynical analysis that everything just reproduces the existing power relations, but actively look for those initiatives that are really trying to combine justice issues and inequality and energy poverty with the ecological dimension, and really see how the revenues of renewable energy can be reinvested to also, for instance, deal with energy poverty. And here we also see that decentralization is often something that is assumed to lead to more equal power relations. But we have all seen in the cases of Airbnb and Uber, how something that decentralizes resources, a platform that is there to decentralize resources, can then also re-centralize power and profits within, for instance, a platform company behind it. So a question that I always ask, if you look at all these decentralized energy initiatives and community energy, how do we avoid that these kind of initiatives are co-opted and become the new Ubers of the energy systems in the future? So to end on the concept of transformative power, which is of course very important because it's also in the title of the guide, here we conceptualize transformative power as a particular combination of, first of all, prefigurative power, which is the capacity to prefigure new ways of doing, thinking, and organizing. For instance, in community energy, new ways of producing energy, of organizing that in a cooperative form. But what you also need for transformative power is so-called reinforcive power, which is to produce and reproduce existing, but also new structures and institutions. So, for instance, you need new regulations that enable and that enable these kind of community energy initiatives. And it's also important to really make sure that these are maintained and that these keep that they keep existing, because if you take away these kind of subsidies or regulations like a feed-in tariff, then the community energy initiatives cannot continue to exist. And then a third dimension that is very important is countervailing power, which is the capacity to challenge and dismantle existing structures and institutions. And often this dimension of transformative power tends to be underestimated. So this is really about the need to also for protest and contestation and political action. And the argument here is that you need all three for transformative power. And also that these three types of power are qualitatively different. We often tend to think of power as something like money, that it's neutral. Either you have a lot of it or you have a little of it. And once you have a lot of it, you can decide what you do with it. Am I going to use it to defend the status quo, or am I going to use it to cause change? But our argument is that those actors that have a lot of reinforcive power might not be the same actors that have countervailing or prefigurative power. So this leads to the last point in the guide, which is very much about this translocal empowerment, about the importance of networks that are locally embedded, but also translocally connected. And over the past 10 years, we've done a lot of research about these networks, not just in energy, but across the world, where you really see that the fact that they are locally embedded, but also globally connected is very empowering to them, because it shows people the direct results of what they're doing, while also giving them this wider sense of impact. And you see this, for instance, in the cooperative movement in Europe, where an energy cooperative is a very small initiative, but it's also very much part of this wider network, the European network of energy cooperatives, that very much enable them to also have this reinforcive power, because together they lobby and they influence the European Union, that in turn then develops legislation that then in turn influences national legislation. So in order to exercise all dimensions of transformative power, it's also really about networking, where you don't expect each initiative to do it all, but rather do it as networks. So that's one of the final conclusion of the power guide, where, you know, probably you all have heard this quote, which is very popular in social innovation circles, that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I full-heartedly agree, but I do think we need to emphasize that it's not by only fighting, and you also need to build something new, but you also still need the fight. You really need the both, and you need this collaboration across networks and movements. And on that, I would like to thank you, and apologies for going a little bit over time. And thank you for your attention. And I pass back to Niklas.
Thank you so much, Flor. I think we would hear a loud applause now, but I can see some yellow applause signs popping up already. Great. This was really inspiring and interesting. Thank you so much. Now, as promised, we want to give you the opportunity to engage a bit in these thoughts. And the way we want to do this is with a first round of breakout groups. I think we're about 50 to 60 people now, so this should allow for a setup of about 2 people per group. So this will be very personal, and it will be 10 minutes, maybe a bit shorter because of time. And we would ask you to take a minute to reflect on ideas, questions, comments that were provoked by this first presentation, and then introduce yourself to each other, and if given your initiative that you work with or that you bring along, and share your questions or thoughts or experiences. And this is just to digest a little bit what we've just heard, and whatever results from your one-on-one discussion, we can also then pick up in the next round of breakout groups. So I will ask Magdalena if our breakout groups are ready. Thumbs up, that sounds great. Then I would say, let's start and see you in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, you're not joining? Then we'll put you in room 1. Okay.
If possible, not.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
okay.
So Magdalena, if you can reassign your partner.
All right. Do you want to join a room, Julia?
No, I wrote you a message. If possible, I would prefer not to. Sorry.
Okay, sorry, missed the message, but that's fine. Oh my,
So
people are
Yunglin,
leaving.
you can assign. Shall I do it? Oh, okay. Yunglin can go to Olga in 20. Here we go.
I'm just here more to listen. I hope that's okay. So maybe I'll just hang back until everyone's returned from breakout rooms.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay. So I'll check back in later. How long will the rooms be open for?
10 minutes.
Yeah, it's 6 more minutes by now.
Okay, perfect.
So
Thanks.
it's really not easy to distribute people when they always are people dropping out and then or not joining, and then people are.
Because it's really horrible. So my name is Gert van der Mosten. I'm a program facilitator for Leuven 2030. And Leuven is a city in Belgium, a little bit southeast of Brussels. It's 100,000 inhabitants. So you get a general picture of what the conditions where I work in is. And Leuven 2030 itself, it's what we call a multi-actor organization. They made a roadmap for the climate neutrality of Leuven in 2030, 2050, next to the action plans that the city makes itself. So it's interesting that the organization itself is composed of what we call the quadruple helix, or the different partners. So in our board, there is the people from the academic side. Leuven inhabits the biggest university in Belgium. We got people from businesses, we got people from citizens, and we got people from the city itself. So the General Assembly and the board and the network which we work with is really consists of the quadruple helix. The work I do inside that organization is working on an experiment, a very big experiment, on retrofitting houses and changing district energy systems. So we try to make people in our network work on these mitigation adaptation platforms. And before Leuven 2030, I worked for the city of Antwerp for 9 years, and I set up a systemic innovation lab, which was involved in the SONNET project. So that's where I come from. I was involved in the Power Guide and the Power Labs, and they asked me to give some insights that I got. So one remarkable insight for myself was that the idea of power became much more clear for me. So what is power? How can you deal with it? And how can you see it all around you? And it's very interesting that the power struggles and the powerlessness, as Flor framed it, is really all the time around you. In former presentations, I think Flor used to call it the power dance, where power is shifted away. Or I don't have power. Let's go talk to someone else who has power. I like the metaphor of the power dance because it's a thing that you see all the time around. And working in a little bit as a boundary person, as they call it, in working with all these different players, like for the last 9 to 10 years. Gave me a little bit the idea, okay, you need boundary persons to tackle the powerlessness that you encounter in people, because it's mostly that if you want to change streets, if you want to change energy systems, there are always, for example, citizens that say, okay, I can't work on it. I don't have the power to change anything. But then there is a business person that says, oh, okay, I've got a solution. I don't have money. And then you go to the citizen council, and on a way that you can find money. And so you can dance around it. So it's interesting to work with this power dance. But there's another insight. The conversation on power is not so easy. Leuven 2030, as an organization itself, is a social innovation. If you look at the definition that were presented earlier on, and within these, Flor didn't share the picture, but within the Power Guide, there is this multi-actor perspective where you got a triangle with on the top, you got the politics, on the right side you got businesses, on the left side of the point of the triangle you got citizens. As a multi-actor organization, as a network, you're somewhere in between those 3 points. So that's kind of innovative in your organization, and if you want to try to work in it, you try to dance around those 3 points. You try to work with government, then you try to shift towards what citizens doing. You take some initiative from business, for example. And to make it more concrete, we do work on one-stop shops and retrofitting. Government can make like legislation But businesses are more capable of doing it quite fast on making one-stop shops for retrofitting and energy switches. So you have to link those together and dance around those engagements that the different actors can make. But on the other hand, what we do see, and that's interesting for what Flor said on the power over and the power with, we see power structures also in our organization coming back. So it's not that our social innovation isn't powerlessness. For example, the budget that we have as an organization is half of it comes from city government, because they said, okay, we are the organization that gonna fuel the network organization, and for every euro we spend into the organization, the network itself has to leverage that money. But if you got money from one actor flowing in, the certain dynamics of politics and the certain dynamics of power that come with money are repeating itself. If city politics says something within our General Assembly or acts within our General Assembly or within our board, there is more power flowing from it. You see it within different conversations. There are certain conversations happening more with the city. So in sort of the power that is existing in the system is repeating itself within social innovation. We are aware of that, so that's a good thing, but we still have to struggle on how to make that multi-actor platform work on a very efficiently way and on a very transformative way. Another example to add on it is on the social justice side. Within the roadmap that Leuven 2030 made, so we made a program, a roadmap on how to make Leuven climate neutral. There's also the big idea of social justice in there. We got a program, it's a program 13 out of my head, that's saying, okay, we have to take everybody along. Social justice for more vulnerable groups is really important. In the energy domain where I'm working, in the experiment we were setting up, we got an organization, it's called Less is More, which is working on retrofitting houses of more vulnerable people. In Belgium, quite a little bit, everybody owns its own house. Even more vulnerable people which are not in line for social housing out of energy poverty buy their own houses, and then they're stuck within a house that is very energy negative, and they are called noodkopers or buyers in need, and it's very difficult to let them change their houses. So there's an organization trying to leverage that, and within the experiment we helped them to, what they were called, to make their social customer journey more visible, and by giving those more vulnerable people a voice, it happened that we could make the social customer journey to lay next to the customer journey that the city of Leuven itself is making, and what the energy desk, who's giving advice to people and loans, is making itself. So by giving people a language and a narrative, we were able to align those two perspectives and gave them a little bit more power into the discussion. So it was very interesting to set those two together. But then on a more general level, we see that giving social vulnerable people a voice within the organization still stays very, very difficult. So it is also there that you see the power relations that we try to avoid are still replacing itself within a social initiative. So it's kind of a struggle to work with it. And for me, we've got to learn how to dance the power struggle a little bit more. Other insights, I'm looking at my time, I still got a few minutes left, I guess. The issue on, or the building block 5 that was in the power guide, which is the power over and the power to and the power with, gave us insights on. For me, it was insightful on countering the powerlessness that you see. If you work on retrofit, if you don't change the tax system, which is quite worse in Belgium for retrofitting, but in general in Europe, you can't move that fast. So you don't have the power to change it. But recently, the Flemish government, in line of the COP discussions, changed its climate plan and made an obligation for the worst houses to retrofit themselves, but to a general level. So to be technical, from an EF to a D level, which is not enough to change. So the Flemish government has the power over obligating people to renovate their home. But then on a local level, you have the power to do better and to make a pipeline of a delivery model that goes further. So people are always struggling and saying, okay, Flemish government had to decide better, but given their own circumstances, that was the best they could do on a political level. But it doesn't mean that on a local level, you don't have the power to better. And given that insight is if you take it from there, the discussions change and alter within the organizations we work with. So I think it's interesting to use the insights from the power guide to reframe your own narrative. And then you come a little bit to the power which is, like Flor explained, acting in concert. I don't think it's a little bit a dance where you always happily dance together. I think it's just trying to move together in a way that you look at the same goal. Sometimes it can really working together can be working together, but then it mostly is to see where people are going and how you can act on it. And that was my last insight.
Thank you, Red, also for your time sensitivity. Thank you very much. I think this was quite interesting to hear actually how in a city context power is everywhere and how you can try to dance around. I think that was a good image also. If you have questions for Gert, please remember them or already put them in the chat, but we'll have the opportunity to go into breakout groups and you can choose where you want to go, so you can continue discussing with Gert in a minute. But before doing that, I would like to ask Chris to come to the floor and follow with his presentation.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I will be giving the energy community perspective, which I'm very happy to see that it's been dominating the discussion around social innovations. Some other social innovators here might be feel a bit sidelined, but I'm very happy to see that community energy centerpiece of the discussions today. So we are, I'm representing Hyperion, a solar energy community in Greece. So at the very quick glance, we're based in Athens, we're not for profit, which means that any potential like revenue that we produce through our activities, we redistribute towards our goals and towards further activities, not amongst the members. We are now 35 members and growing. We have a wide diversity of backgrounds. In the picture here, you can see students, lawyers, accountants, Greenpeace employees, really. And I think that's also the strength, both in Hyperion, but generally in all sorts of social and innovative groups, having this open dialogue of different perspectives and different views that clash together and form better and more colorful things. We work a lot on community building. Also, again, in the photo, you can see we got together a couple of times in the center of Athens during the summer. We had some food, we exchanged some gifts, because beyond energy, it's also about building a community. I think this speaks back to what Flor was saying, that beyond the social innovation itself, it is also about upending the general cultural and economic paradigm that you're operating within. So by trying to prefigure both a different way of producing energy, but also a different way of building community and relating with other people around you, I think that's the most important thing for me. And of course, all of our planning is participatory, and we try to build a shared vision around where do we want Hyperion to go. I've been, since I did my thesis on post-growth and energy communities, I've been really trying to propagandize about how we should explicitly link post-growth and with Hyperion and take relevant actions according to that. I'm going to show you a very quick 2-minute animation which describes how Hyperion works and everything. And then I'm gonna very quickly talk about the links to power. Yeah, 1 sec. So yeah, the working model is actually called collective self-consumption through virtual net metering, meaning that we collectively invest in a solar park, but that is not, the production of the energy is not where the consumption is. It can be like anywhere in the broader geographic region. Yeah, and you'll see how that works and why here.
In Athens, many houses face energy poverty, which means that they cannot afford to electrify and heat their house in the winter or cool it in the summer. At the same time, the majority of electricity stems from lignite, one of the most polluting fossil fuels. To avert a climate catastrophe, we need to switch to renewable energy fast. One such solution is community solar self-consumption. How does community solar self-consumption work? Many people come together and invest money to create a solar farm. This way, they form an energy community. By paying a certain membership fee, they become owners of a portion of the community solar farm that is adequate enough to cover their energy needs. Say 4 kilowatt out of the 200 kilowatt solar farm. Using the virtual net metering model, the collectively owned solar panels are installed somewhere in your neighborhood, town, or city suburbs, depending on the size. This is important for Athens, where most people live in blocks of flats, and installing rooftop solar panels is not easy. Clean energy produced in the site is then fed into the power grid. You continue to get electricity from your utility without having to install solar panels in your rooftop or building. Then your utility compares your electricity consumption in your household to your electricity production by your solar farm. In case the consumption is higher than the production, you only pay for the difference. Consumers become prosumers as they generate their own power in an affordable, environmentally friendly, democratic, and just way. This is the essence of energy democracy. Hyperion is the first of its kind virtual net metering solar energy community in Athens, Greece. It is a grassroots initiative by citizens and social enterprises. It is aiming to tackle energy poverty, to showcase a new energy ownership model, and to help shift into a new societal paradigm. The solar farm will be constructed in central Greece and will power more than 50 homes and small businesses, generating 250,000 kilowatts of clean energy per year. Energy communities are popping up all over Europe and the world. Our aim is to use Hyperion as a guiding project to develop the skills, capacity, and knowledge so as to replicate the project in other areas of Greece and potentially internationally. The time to do this is now, which is why we ask for your support to collect the seed capital we need. How can you be involved? Donate. Every amount, no matter how small, helps. Spread the word. Switch to renewable energy and maybe start your own energy community.
You're muted, Chris.
Sorry. Yeah, that's it for Hyperion. And just very quickly to now let's spell out the links of how does Hyperion navigate these power relationships. First of all, there's definitely the power with working, as I said, with a diversity of people with completely different backgrounds. We're able to pool ideas, capacities, and skills to create a community of practice. This is more than, as I said, just about creating a technical project around energy. It's also about understanding the legal aspects of it, the political aspects of it, the societal aspects of it, speaking with people, understanding how do we use energy, how can we use less energy, how can we live more sustainably in general. So it is about this intercommunal process. There's also the idea of reinforcing power. So a very, very important point here is in the intercooperative solidarity that we've experienced with Hyperion. Copernico, one of the largest solar energy cooperatives in Portugal, actually helped us with our fundraising. So they helped us build our first project. This is extremely important as it also, again, speaks back to what Flor was saying in her presentation about how we can't really isolate or retreat into the local or the island, or just like do something that is super good and is super innovative, but doesn't really reach out and try to append broader networks and relations. But by connecting with other cooperatives at the European level, where we are able to start building these relationships of mutual support and start building that relative independence from banks or other, like, let's say, traditional capitalist institutions that are trying to make profit out of our initiative, for example. Another thing, with Hyperion, we've been exercising countervailing power in the sense that we've been, in the way that we've been presenting Hyperion and through our narrative, been delegitimizing the current large-scale, mostly fossil-based energy regime, specifically using the current energy crisis, which is fossil gas is mostly responsible for, as a window of opportunity to hammer that message home and say that to truly shield yourself and build resilience against this crisis, you need to build up that self-sufficiency around energy. And of course, we have also managed to exercise prefigurative power in the sense that we've seen that we've managed to, by showcasing this example of how citizens, and not just us, there's other energy communities across Greece and Europe as well, but by highlighting these best practice examples, we've been able to influence the public dialogue about the power of energy communities and their multiple social and ecological benefits, including specifically for countries like Greece that are undergoing a coal phase out, how energy communities could be used as a tool for a just transition. So helping workers produce, let's say, for example, their own energy in areas that are undergoing a coal phase out right now. Of course, there has been reactions from systemic actors, be it lobbying from the fossil fuel industry. We see there's an excessive push by Greek authorities to keep funding fossil gas, keep building new pipelines. The East Med pipeline from Israel that goes through Cyprus and Greece is a very prominent example, which of course means that you divert energy, resources, time, and focus and attention from this decentralized, citizen-focused energy planning. And importantly, there's also cooptation by incumbent large-scale renewable energy investors. So it's not just the fossils that are, like the usual suspects, but it's also big renewable energy companies and investors that are setting up fake energy communities to actually take advantage of the, let's say, extra benefits and incentives that are given to energy communities, such as priority access to the grid. So now we have hundreds of energy communities registered in Greece, but only a handful, only like, let's say 40 or 50, are genuine energy communities constituted by citizens. Importantly, on the top right picture here, you can see there's been fierce reactions by local societies against the installation of large-scale wind energy projects in the islands, such as in the Cyclades, in the Aegean Sea. And there's been huge police repression against these people as well. So you see that, as we're navigating from a fossil system to a renewable energy system, but are not questioning the capitalist economic growth paradigm that's driving this system, we're just going to keep perpetuating these colonial, these violent, these repressive systems of power, even if it's from the sun or the wind. That's why we need to start also discussing the social relations, not just the energy relations. Another interesting thing, and this is the final thing that I'll say, is how we're noticing how, again, these mega projects from mega renewable energy investors, let's say like a 5 gigawatt wind park, are coming in there. Before even they build the project, they notify the grid operator and they say that I have the intention of building this project here. And then the grid operator basically locks that available space of 5 gigawatt from between 1 to 3 years, meaning that so many citizen projects, so many smaller initiatives, so many farmer cooperatives, so many energy communities are not able to connect to the grid because the grid has already been this grid space has been saved for these mega projects that are supposed to happen in the future. So we see that there's also this exclusion even from physical infrastructure.
If you could wrap up, that would be great. Thank you.
Just to say that our next steps is to keep networking with other energy communities, with municipalities, with European entities, and even expanding in other projects such as agrivoltaics or e-mobility. And to build Hyperion 2, an even larger solar park with even more people. And that's it from me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm sorry that I have to cut this short, but as usual, webinars go over and we're in the midst of it. So very exciting, very good insights. Thank you very much again. We're going to have a short breakout round 2 now. This will work the way that we have a breakout group per speaker, and you can choose where you go. For that, you will need to click on the breakout symbol on the bottom or on the top of your navigation window, and then you can choose from the different breakout groups, but just in a minute. So also here, take a minute to reflect the inputs that you just heard. And then what we would like to do is a so-called chat storm or a chat relay method. So share your questions for the speaker in the chat. And then we will start with one person to present his or her question. And then that speaker can choose based on the chat questions, the next question and the next speaker or the next participant. So I think due to the time, we will only collect 3 questions and then the speaker will try to answer them, I hope. And then I guess the 10 minutes that are left will be used up. So with that, we will have a moderation person in each of the breakout groups, so don't worry. And with that, I think we should get right into the breakout groups. Magdalena, are we ready? There we are. Okay. So if you don't see a window popping up, click on the bottom of your navigation window and then choose the group that you want to go in. And I will join you, Chris. So see you in a minute. Okay, I think now everybody found it. I still see 13 people undecided. All right.
Hi there. Hi, I was just wondering, how do I find the breakout groups?
Oh, you can click on breakout groups in the bottom, but I can also send you somewhere. Which one do you want to join?
Could you please move me to the first speaker?
Yeah, the floor.
Yes, that would be fabulous. Thank you. It's
Perfect.
really
I'll
weird. I
send it
don't
here.
see it anywhere.
Yeah, it's a bit hidden in the bottom always.
Oh, now I see it.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you, Magdalena, for managing the breakout group so well. Yeah, this was a bit shorter than we had originally planned, but we also want to stay in time to not stress your schedule. So I hope you were able to get some answers, and we know there's always more. And yeah, maybe you can also just follow up with our speakers. I'm sure you'll find them on the internet if there's something really interesting or urgent to bring up. So now we have about 8 minutes left for the wrap up. And I want to briefly promote our guide again, because today is basically the launch of the Power Guide. So anything we had heard today was either inspired by it or related to it. If you haven't already seen it, you can find it here at sonnet-energy.eu/power-guide. It's also been in the chat a couple of times, so I'm sure you have it by now. On a more general note, if you also want to follow us in the Sonnet project, you can find us on Twitter. You can write us an email, or you can also just browse through our website. If you want to stay informed about events like this webinar, you can also sign up and receive emails from our Sonnet email list or newsletter. Yeah, and we have some more interesting events coming up. We still have about half a year to go, and some more webinars are planned. Also, we have some energy reads compiling some of the insights that we generate in the project. So you're very welcomed to have a look at all of this. And I think with that, he could theoretically close. I'm not sure, Tessa, is there anything from your side that you would like to also bring up?
Well, just a big thank you to all the speakers that we had today, and yes, we were hoping that we could go back into to our breakout room, but that was a time issue, unfortunately. But yeah, big thank you to Flor, Gert, and Chris for sharing their experiences with us today.
Great, thank you. Then maybe, because we actually do have 5 more minutes, maybe we can have a last statement, like a goodbye statement from our 3 speakers. And with that, then say goodbye to our audience. And I would say, ladies first, maybe Flor, you can start.
Yeah, we just ended our breakout group with a huge question. Adrian was just discussing the contradictions between alternatives and the current economic system. So it really ended in this like really big question. So there is eagerness to continue. Thank you all for being here. I think the Power Guide, this was just a launch. So given also all the questions that were raised and weren't answered in the discussions that were there, we will see if we can have a follow-up discussion or community conversation around the Power Guide. So we will think about it and come back to you.
Great.
And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Flor. Thank you also from my side again for being here. Very interesting insights. Then let's continue with Gert.
Hey, what struck me in the questions and also in the question that were sent in before it is power has also to do with scale, the scale of the personal level, the level of your community, the level above, and it is, in my opinion, important that maybe of my background as a geographer to try to see through these different scales all the time and see, okay, where is the power dimension right now? Where am I looking right now? Am I looking on a personal level, a level higher, a level of a project, a level of a community, a level of an organization, regional level, and try to dance also on different scales.
Okay, food for thought. Thank you for that, Gert, and also, yeah, thank you again for being here with us today. I hope you also had a good breakout group, and I can say that for the one I joined, which was with Chris, and then Chris, you have the final statement.
Yeah, I guess speaking about economic alternatives and to do that one last bit of self-promotion, I would say energy communities are in a way one such alternative because they don't pursue growth per se, economic growth. They pursue social objectives and environmental objectives. And this is, I think, the biggest power struggle we'll have to face as social innovators and sustainability practitioners over the next few years, having the power over being able to shape the narrative of what are actually the goals that we want to pursue as humanity. Is it like eternal abstract GDP growth, or are there specific indicators ranging from clean energy to gender equality that we actually want to pursue to achieve human well-being and environmental sustainability? That's going to be the locus of the fighting.
All right, thank you. I think this is a very encouraging outlook. Feels like a power with, maybe, I'm not sure. But that's left to each of you to maybe continue thinking about and make a decision. And yeah, thank you, Chris, also to you. I think this was a really great and inspiring example, and also a very nice video, I must say. And with that, we even end a bit before time, so to say. And I think this is also not bad. I want to wish you all a good rest of the day and good rest of the week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating so actively. And we hope to see you again in our next webinar within the SONNET series. And I say bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.